Great. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining and jumping on this morning. We are here to talk about the Alaska Rhodiola market update. My name is Melissa Heuer with Spork Consulting, and I'm excited to kick us off on this cold Saturday morning, at least here in Anchorage. Maybe colder or not as cold wherever you all might be. First, I want to just introduce who our project team is and talk a little bit about what we're going to be going over this morning. As I said, my name is Melissa Heuer with Spork Consulting, based here in Anchorage, Alaska. I have been lucky enough to be the project consultant on this project and on the 2024 market assessment. And I'll be reviewing briefly those, a little bit from that 2024 study, and then the update market assessment that we just are wrapping up this month. We also have Sundance Pfizer with the Alaska Food Policy Council. She'll be talking a bit about what the Alaska Food Policy Council does, their really important role here in Alaska. And as the sponsors of this project and so many other important projects in Alaska, it'll be great to hear how people can get more involved with them too if they'd like to. We'll also hear from Dr. Petra Illig, who owns Alaska Rhodiola and is a great resource for how to market and process and kind of the bigger picture about what's happening with rhodiola here in Alaska. And then we'll wrap up with Kristina Peterson with the Oregon Tilth. She's the organic conservation specialist, talking about organic certification and those opportunities and options for growers in Alaska to see if that's the right choice for you as you're pursuing rhodiola growing here in the state. And with that, I will pass it off to Sundance. We will have a couple minutes, or we'll have a couple moments for questions after each section. If you have them, feel free to type those into the chat, or you can hold them till the end too, and we can answer those as we get there. We'll have a couple opportunities as we go along. Thanks so much. Sundance, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Melissa. So I am the Operations and Finance Director for the Alaska Food Policy Council. We're a statewide nonprofit. Our office is based in Homer, but we do have some staff, and our board members are throughout the state. Our mission is to connect, advocate, and inform to strengthen food systems for all Alaskans. And we do this from a systems approach, where you make a change in one area of the food system, it has impacts throughout. And we've got a number of little graphics like this scattered throughout our website. So yeah, next slide. Again, that's our mission. That's our conference artwork from a couple years ago, just to kind of illustrate Alaska's food system and just how complex it is and what all it encompasses. Yeah, go ahead. Next slide. This is our staff and board. We are a staff of 4, and we have a 12, soon to be 14 member, all volunteer board of directors. Next slide. Part of our work are these working groups. So we just started the Alaska School Nutrition Working Group. As topics arise that people want to connect with us on, or connect with each other, or create resources for, we do that through these working groups. They meet monthly, with the exception of holidays or one-off changes, but generally they meet monthly, and sometimes they have guest speakers. They have focus topics or issues that they work through. And we encourage anyone who's interested to fill out the form on our website, and we will get you connected and plugged in. The Alaska Food Systems Network is these working groups, and also if you go to the next screen, we have the Alaska Food Systems Network quarterly gatherings. We just did our 5th one, so we've made it a whole calendar year, and we've planned out all of the 2026 quarterly gatherings as well. They are just like a way to bridge that space between conferences so people within the food system of Alaska can connect. We do advocacy updates. We welcome guest speakers and presentations, and then also have a time where attendees can share what's going on in their corner of the food system. If they have any, funding opportunities or events that are coming up, we're happy to spotlight those. And we also have just like this week announced our dates for the 2026 Alaska Food Festival and Conference. It'll be the ninth event and it's in Fairbanks. And this year it's going to be 3 days, which is a day longer than we typically do. So we're very excited. Next slide. Okay, before you hit play on this one, part of our work is we have a number of programs, and one of them is this partnership with Northwest Top, and we made a series of 4 videos highlighting organic producers in the state, where they can kind of share their experience in a few minutes in their own voice, and we've got another series planned for 2026. This farmer, Flying Moose Farm, is in Nikolaevsk down on the Kenai Peninsula, and he's a rhodiola farmer. So we thought it would be fun to share this one with this group, and the others are on our website. So yeah, go ahead and play it.
It's a top secret from Soviet Union called Rhodiola rosea, but we found it. It's in Alaska now. Not secret no more. Well, my name is Stash Kalugin, and name of the farm is Flying Moose. They use for cancer, dementia. There's like 12 or 16 things they've been studying, and it helps with everything. I'm still in the trial base. I'm like a scientist and a farmer same time. So this is direct seeding I did. I'm trying that out, see how it works. We have 4 years to wait before we can harvest. So in those 4 years, you got to learn how to do all the additives to it. Everybody think that, well, I just plant my thing and it will grow. It doesn't. You have to put your effort into it. If it doesn't work this way, let's do something different. It's a challenge yet because, like I said, I don't have the magic number for amendments to put for soil. Every market I found, they want organic. So if non-organic, people buy for $35 or cheaper. They want it for free, but it takes 4 years to grow it. With the organic, there's a lot of buyers. I even had a buyers from India, from different foreign countries. But they want 10 metric tons, okay? 10 metric tons. And I keep telling them, I don't sell metric, I sell a poundage. 300, 500 pounds. Last year, I sold 500 pounds. They're there to get the paperwork done and then get you certified. It's not that hard. I'm only a grade graduate. I did it. And the American language, the second language to me, and I still did it. A couple of questions they had, they called me, we answered, and we were done. It's not that hard, but it's just, I think it's a mentality of humans, this is hard, this is, but it's not.
And here are a couple of links. You can find these on our website as well. To sign up for our newsletter, it goes out monthly. It's where all of our most recent announcements, working group updates, and blog posts are. And then, of course, it's the end of the year, and we would welcome any year-end donations. And there's a link for that as well. If you have any questions, you can reach out via email or through our website. And yeah, we are definitely here to be a resource throughout the state, open to any feedback and ideas and any way for folks to get involved. So thank you, Melissa, for giving us a minute to do that.
Great. Thank you, Sundance. And also for getting this work to happen here in Alaska. We couldn't do it without Alaska Food Policy Council, so thank you. Any questions before we move on to the recap? Okay, great. Well, I am going to talk about Alaska, this whole market update that we've been doing. And I will dive in a little bit, just tell you a little bit about Spork Consulting and why we are working on this project. We're an Alaskan-based consulting firm. We do a lot of work around resilient food systems and food research, climate change adaptation work, and community building. We're especially specialized in community-driven research rooted in Alaskan priorities and voices, and looking at the really diverse landscapes throughout the entire state, which are so different depending on where you are in Alaska. We have proven experience in this work with a lot of stakeholder engagement and agriculture feasibility and market development. And I've done a lot of lead analysis on statewide assessments that inform policy, funding, and farm level decisions. We also have strategic alignment with AFPC and the Oregon Tilth, the Northwest Top, with goals to strengthen local agriculture. And we're the organization that worked on this 2024 study as well. So there's a lot of continuity to this research. And then we're focused on building practical pathways from interest to production and market success. So really well aligned with a lot of this work that's happening. For those of you who may not have been involved in the 2024 market work that we did, it was a much larger project. It was much more comprehensive. It ended with a big in-person workshop in Anchorage. It was a hybrid workshop and a lot of interest from across the state. We found that there was a broad and growing interest statewide. I'm just going to do a little recap of what we found in 2024 and what we've seen now into 2025. There was a ton of early enthusiasm from both aspiring and existing growers. And there's a small market currently in Alaska. There was a lot of interest. There was also a big understanding of limits from where wild rhodiola is growing in the world to those areas no longer being able to be harvested for sustainability reasons and for protection issues of those plants. And so there's some big gaps that need to be filled in the global supply. And Alaska's unique climate has major advantages for helping to fill those gaps. Some of the big barriers that we identified were the complexity of the organic certification system, people just not really understanding how to go about doing it, why to go about doing it, getting certifiers to come out and see their spaces, just understanding more about sort of the organic certification system in the state. Lack of disease management information. And while it's not part of today's presentation, there was a lot of information learned, especially from Dr. Jennifer Macbeth out of UAF, who's doing a lot of research on disease and the right type of rhodiola to be growing in Alaska. And that is a really big and important part that was identified as needs to continue happening. There's also limited processing capacity and infrastructure. And then there was a lot of siloed growers and the need for communications networks. People were doing a lot of things on their own and weren't necessarily happy about that. And then there's just a lot of market potential recommendations from the 2024. There's significant potential for Alaska to become a major cultivator and supplier of rhodiola for both the US market but more international market. There's opportunities created by the restricted global wild supply. And then from the community of growers, a number of things were recommended that grower cooperatives or working groups were developed. Technical assistance and organic certification support is needed, and those connections need to continue to be made. And we do have Kristina, who will be talking later today about some of those growing opportunities. More research is needed. The work that's happening at UAF to lead disease management and varietal selection is key to the success of rhodiola in the state. And market expansion strategies and buyer engagement, which Petra will, I'm sure, be talking a bit about as well. So it's been a year since we wrapped up the main study. So what has happened? We don't often get a chance to come back and review what changes go on from these research projects. And it's been really nice to see, did any impact happen from that work? What has changed? Did more people get involved? Did less people get involved? And so we did this pretty short and sweet market survey update. And we had great participation. We had 20 people who were interested in growing from throughout the state. And from throughout the state, I mean like really north, south, east, west, everywhere, there are people interested in growing rhodiola. And the time frame for growing rhodiola changed from, maybe thinking about it, I might do it in a couple years, we'll see what's happening, to an increased interest in planting within the next 1 to 3 years. There's also a growing motivation for why people want to grow rhodiola, for wellness uses, to diversify their existing crops and for value-added potential. There's also some still remaining key barriers for potential growers, understanding where to get plant stock and plant stock availability, understanding how to grow rhodiola, what that entails. It's a little bit of a different crop than a lot of things people are used to, how to process it, and how to get it to market. And then there's still a continued strong desire for training, guidance, and mentorship. Of the current growers, we had a pretty similar number that responded to that 2024 year. We had about 7. Uh, it's not a huge number of growers in the state, but the people who are growing are continuing their production. No one had stopped growing rhodiola in the last year, and they're cautiously planning or thinking about more expansion of their crops. They all, most of them confirmed high yield qualities or high yield productions and high quality from their crops. Some of their most significant barriers they were facing were processing capacity. A lot of these are the same barriers that many other crops also are facing in the state, but specifically rhodiola has a lot of processing needs around washing, slicing, drying, and storage, which all lead directly to how the quality of the product from the rhodiola plant. Also, there are different labor demands and multi-year crop cycles are still challenges that farmers are trying to understand and assess. Uh, Additionally, they're finding more market uncertainty this year as some buyers are reducing or pausing purchases. One of the things that remain consistent is that growers want more communication with each other, more roundtables, more collaborative communication, more market transparency, and more technical support. So what are some of the trends we saw from that first study to this study is that enthusiasm for rhodiola continues to rise among new growers, and existing growers are still happy with their product. They remain committed to growing rhodiola, but are cautious about too much expansion too fast or what's going to happen. There's always market changes. More information, especially for new growers, is needed on propagation, soil condition assessments, and marketing tools for how those things happen. And there's still remaining a clear need for coordinated, communicated, and technical support and communication among growers. So our recommended next steps are to establish a statewide grower networking group, uh, develop Alaska-specific growing, harvesting, and processing guidance, conduct feasibility assessments for shared processing facilities if that's necessary or not, rebuild buyer relationships and strengthen market pathways, expand technical assistance for certification, business planning, and crop management. And there's resources available from Alaska Food Policy Council, Northwest Top, and Oregon Tilth, among others. And continue surveys to track trend changes and inform future programming. Overall, though, the picture for rhodiola in Alaska still remains rosy, and it's a really exciting time to be looking at this in Alaska and see what is developing and where Alaska can continue to grow. So thank you. Are there any questions before we move on to Petra, who will provide even more information about what you can do with it once you grow it? Okay, Petra, I'm actually going to switch you here. And I will share my other screen. And we will go here. Whoops. Oh, my screens are disappearing.
I see it on my screen.
Perfect. I'm just trying to get you onto the presenter mode here. Oops. Okay. Great. And with that, I'll pass this off to you.
Thank you very much. Will my next slide key work for this, or do you have to do it for me?
I'll advance it for you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Melissa and your gang, I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. I would never have dreamed 15 years ago when I was wondering, like, how do you spell rhodiola? I mean, that was kind of the beginning, right? I couldn't even pronounce it. To have gotten this far and to have this many people interested and enthused about it and growing. So thank you very much. Go ahead. So I'm just kind of want to give a little brief overview here about things that people may already know. So, the most of the rhodiola has, until recently, been coming from Russia and China from wild harvested rhodiola. Was this actually my first slide? I'm just wondering. I'm feeling like it might have jumped. Yeah, I guess so. Okay. All right. Thank you. So how much rhodiola actually comes from outside? Well, most of it does, but we can't track it very well because there's really no harmonized tariff codes for rhodiola to quantify imports. So if you kind of Google like how much rhodiola comes from various countries, it's just not there because there's no tracking system yet. But we do know that China sources most of its rhodiola still even now from its vast wild populations. And I have to kind of put in here in parentheses, it's heavily exploited. And people understand that it's actually over harvested in very unsustainable and unethical ways. But they import these raw materials also from other countries surrounding China, Russia, um, until recently, Ukraine, places like that. And they are starting to develop some cultivation operations, but we don't really have any visibility into that. The other problem with China is that it has a widespread practice of adulteration. And by adulteration, I mean mixing cultivated and wild roots and also combining different rhodiola species. You know, rhodiola seed, the group of rhodiola, there are about 90-ish species, and they kind of look alike. Even ours up here, Rhodiola integrifolia, is sometimes confused with Rhodiola rosea, but they kind of mix them together, and so you never really know. Russia is also a major source of wild harvested raw material. And as far as we know, again, you know, with the geopolitics as they are right now, cultivation seems to be on a relatively small commercial scale, but it's probably growing. And in both of these countries, I suspect cultivation is increasing because of CITES, which went into effect a couple of years ago. And I'll mention CITES again in another slide, but that stands for the Convention of International Trade of Endangered Species, Flora and Fauna. And rhodiola was placed on that list. Wild rhodiola was placed on that list in late 2022, which makes it more difficult and actually technically prohibits international trade of rhodiola, wild harvested rhodiola across international boundaries. Next slide, please. So what about in the United States and in Canada? What is the market here? What are the prices here? There is quite a wide range, and it depends on organic certification status, rosamin and salidroside levels, country of origin. Here, the only countries that you can grow rhodiola in are, you know, the Arctic and subarctic countries, USA and Canada. Alaska specifically. Although I have heard, but I've not been able to verify that there may be some small growers in like Vermont. I constantly get questions from people wanting to grow it in various parts of the lower 48. And I guess you probably can grow it up, you know, high in the Rockies, but that's not really where people farm. And I can't imagine there'd be a lot of interest in doing, you know, large scale commercial cultivation there. The age of the harvest, in other words, when the plant was harvested and processed and made into a dry root, the age of that particular harvest does not seem to matter much to a buyer, except that if they're checking rosamins and salidrosides, they do deteriorate over time. So in and of itself, like if you're in 2026 and you have a 2024 harvest, instead of a 2025 harvest, you probably still have a lot of good value for that crop. But if the buyer wants fresh testing, you got to understand that Rosavins can deteriorate over time. Currently, it's about $60 per pound. Um, and this year, there were some growers on the Kenai that told me that they had sold it for $110 to $125 a pound, but I couldn't verify that. And recently, I was at um, um, a trade show, Supply Side West in Las Vegas, and I met with several potential buyers, Mountain Rose Herbs in particular. And when I told them, yeah, there's a farmer on the Kenai, 110, and they said, forget it. We can get it cheaper than that. And I think they were referring to Canada. So you got to be careful. I mean, the price is increasing over time. Um, Back in 2015, we were happy if we got $25 a pound, and now $60 and $65 a pound is a very solid price. So, that is 2.5 times. But we got to be careful that we don't oversell this, thinking that, people will buy this at much higher prices at this point in time. In Canada, um, they do stratify the pricing depending on whether it's called conventionally grown, which is non-certified organic, versus certified organic. And they also price it whether or not it is above or below 1.0% of Rosavins. And again, I mentioned CITES had a significant impact on the pricing and availability. Um, Argo does the Alberta Rhodiola Rosea Growers Organization, which is the group in Alberta that has the largest share of growers that work together with a access to a root processing facility. They don't they don't publish their production data simply because this is an association of independent growers and not, a company that will market and produce various data. There's another organization, a spinoff, a company called the Canadian Growers Association, and they kind of are an independent group. But again, the pricing is pretty close between the two. Next slide, please. So, how many Alaska rhodiola growers are out there? Well, I was pleased to hear you had feedback from 7 of them. That seems about right. We know for certain that there are 3 on the Kenai, maybe 4 or 5. Al Poindexter is planning on and has been putting in about 12 acres at a time here in the past year or two. Um, we know in the Matsu, there's one small grower. She keeps delaying harvesting for one reason or another. And the nice thing about rhodiola is, it's not like going to disappear if you don't harvest one year. It just gets, bigger and you harvest again the next year. Another grower that has spoken at conferences, they're planning on putting in 20 acres once they get their land cleared. I'm going to back up here. Eagle River, we have one very small grower, but he does it more like for research. That's Carl Edwards. But he does harvest what he has and offers that. So I periodically hear of others who are thinking about it, but I don't have any mechanism to follow up with them. And again, comments were made about having some sort of coordinated effort. We used to have a co-op, but it was disbanded in 2016. And I think something like that is really, really important so that we can share understanding and information and resources. Next slide. So who is buying it? As far as I can tell, up until this year, mostly Al Poindexter and I have been buying it. We've been buying whatever we possibly can because we decided to establish a manufacturing facility here to keep the value added profit in Alaska and not, source it out like we normally do in Alaska, which is extract and ship and let those companies make, the additional value added from our natural resources. Um, I do know that there's generally a few £100 sold to other companies like Mountain Rose Herbs. There are a few growers who are starting to make their own products, their own tinctures, selling dried root for tea, etc. We are certainly actively marketing our product online into stores and wellness clinics, heavily in Alaska, but also scattered throughout the United States. These are mostly small family-owned farms with gift shops, wellness clinics, spas, chiropractors, things like that. I'm recently started working with an herbal product salesperson in Texas who wants to distribute this throughout his region in Texas. We're not able to, despite trying very, very hard, we're not able to get into other more well-known commercial brands like Sprouts or Puget Community Co-op in Seattle, places like that. Those are really hard nuts to crack. And certainly we don't have the volume yet to even consider approaching, Whole Foods. We need a whole bunch more acreage for that. But the nice thing is that once people get our products into their stores, they sell very well. It's simply because Alaska grown rhodiola is a great product. I mean, it is of good quality and much higher quality, in my opinion, than rhodiola products that come from, other commercial sources like Russia and China, where those bags of dried root have been probably sitting in warehouses for weeks or months even before they're processed, and we get them in quite fresh. So people really do like it. Next slide. So root processing, obviously this is a bottleneck. We do offer that in Anchor Point, and we do it with the traditional dehydration process. We are going to be experimenting next year with freeze drying methods to see if that's a viable technique. We have access to the Alaska Food Company in Palmer, which has a very large commercial freeze dryer. So we're going to be doing some experimenting to see if it's reasonable to do it. I plan on literally harvesting my little collection. I probably have about, 100 some roots here in my front yard that are going to be ready to be harvested. I'll wash those, I'll slice them, I'll divide them up in half and do traditional dehydration method with half of it and take the other half over to the freeze dryer in Palmer and then do some testing to see, maybe one method is better. You also have to consider the cost of the power cost. So those are all things that we're going to look at to see, if freeze drying might be a viable method. But we have this centralized place in Anchor Point. Obviously, Al uses it for his own crops. There are other growers, for example, Stasha Kalugan, the gentleman in the video. He does bring his crops here. Jonathan Peters, he has his own system of doing it. So some growers do it themselves, some use this, but there really is going to be a need for having other root processing facilities if there's going to be more of rhodiola cultivation like, in the Matsu Valley or further north. The reason being is that even though you harvest the roots and you can clean them up, and they'll remain viable for a long time. By viable, I mean they're not dead. I actually had a root once that I had accidentally left in my glove box in my camper. And a year later, when I opened up the camper for, summer activity, this root that I had actually cleaned and kind of removed the rootlets, it was growing shoots. So it's not dead, but the rosamin levels deteriorate very quickly. Within about 2 weeks, you have a substantial loss of rosamin. So you need to keep them chilled, refrigerator temperatures, if you don't have immediate access to a root processing facility. So there is, a need for having distributed processing availability if the farms do, spread out in other areas outside of the Kenai. Next, please. So the bottom line, in my opinion, is that there is money to be made. The uh, Alaska could become a major producer of cultivated rhodiola rosea in the world, and I'm convinced that it could bring millions of dollars into our economy for the growers and also for the other additional ripple effect by creating, an industry around our Alaska-grown rhodiola by manufacturing and marketing products made here. Next slide, please. So why keep it in Alaska? Well, basically, it's to keep the value added profit here and to create jobs. I've said this before, and so I apologize if people have heard this before, but the aha moment I had was in about 2015. We had bundled up a few hundred pounds of dried rhodiola. It was such a high quality that manufacturer wasn't even going to do an extraction. They were just going to grind it up and powder it and put it in capsules. The grower got a check for 10 grand, and when I added it all up, it seemed to me like it was close to $1 million worth of retail products once it was put into a finished capsule with, bottled and labeled. So that's when the light bulb went on. I said, why are we doing this? Why are we keep, feeding profit to companies outside? So there are a variety of things that can be made. Tincture is simple. It's low cost to make. It's easy to do. If you use, it doesn't deteriorate by microbial contamination with high alcohol contents. You don't have to refrigerate it. It's easy to pour 2 ounces into a bottle, slap a label on it, etc. But there is some customers, a lot of people just don't like having alcohol in their materials that they ingest, or it tastes bad, or that sort of thing. So we are looking to make other kinds of products. Currently, we're making a powdered dried root capsule. But we are also, and I'll mention this a little bit later, and I think I have a slide on it, that we built an extraction facility to extract it into a dry powder for future products. The other thing is that we are really developing a loyal customer base. I get calls from, Vicky at Natural Pantry all the time. Oh, we're out. People are, can you bring it tonight? So once people start taking it, they really, really do like it. Currently, we're selling about 70,000 tincture bottles per year. And like I mentioned, we just started making capsules last month and got those on the market. By the way, just a few days ago, Alaska Rhodiola tincture became the #1 Amazon pick. If you go onto Amazon and look for rhodiola tincture, ours comes up at the top. Next slide, please. So this is just a picture of our little tincture manufacturing facility in Anchor Point. I was grateful to get it out of my living room using turkey basters to fill the bottles. And now we have we could potentially make about 400 bottles a day using our method. Next slide. So this is a picture of one of our 2 rotovapes at our extraction facility in Huffman, and I would love to show anybody who wants to come and get a tour. China is the dominant player in processing and exporting rhodiola extract. They account for the vast majority of extract in the global market. Um, and why extract? Why don't you just grind it up and put it into a capsule like we're currently doing? Well, because the industry standard basically requires that in order to be considered a real high quality rhodiola product in a capsule form, for example, it has to have at least 3% rosavins and preferred also 1% salidroside. The 3-to-1 is sort of like the magic combination. It's hard to get it to that, but we all know that the plant does not make 3% rosavins. So in order to get it into a high quality product, you have to extract it and concentrate it. And that's why we really focus on getting our growers to try to get their dried root to at least 1% rosavins. You can understand the lower the rosavin concentration in the raw material, the harder it is to get it to 3% rosavins in the final product. As a matter of fact, if it's down to 7.7%, we can't even get it to 3% with our current method. So that's why it's really, really, really important. And I differentiate our pricing. I'll offer higher if a grower can produce a 1% rosavins in their raw root versus below. But if it's below 7%, I really can't use it. I mean, I can use it for a tincture, but it's even going to be kind of a low potency tincture. Next slide, please. So future products, like I mentioned, we're making this pure dry powdered extract. It's an arduous, expensive system. Anybody who might have any ideas about how to get grant money for this type of manufacturing, I'm all ears because it's costing us a lot more money than I had planned for at this point. But we're not giving up. So we can make high potency capsules. We can use this dry powdered extract for other products. I'm thinking of powdered stuff to put into sports drinks. The problem with that, though, is it requires a little bit more science because rosavins and salidrosides are not very soluble in water. That's why Rhodiola tea does not give you a lot of rosavins and salidrosides. You get mostly the other chemicals that impart the color and the flavor. That's why you need tincture, being a combination of alcohol and water, bringing in the rosavins and salidrosides that are soluble in organic solvents like alcohol, including the other ingredients that impart the color and the flavor, which are more soluble in water. So it's really hard just to take the dry powdered extract and dump it into, Gatorade and expect it to mix. So there's still some R&D to be done on that. But the other area that I'm really interested in and looking for somebody who we can partner with is to make a line of skincare. Skincare being oil-based is something that would work very, very well. And in Russia and in Eastern Europe, rhodiola skincare is very popular, used in primarily marketed to the woman over 40 because it has anti-aging and anti-wrinkling effects. And it also is used for wound healing. So the other part about this extraction facility, which I think is really good for consideration for other farmers and potential Alaskan products, is we can extract other botanicals. We can do anything that is, basically sugar-based, blueberries, cranberries, Devil's Club, anything that, could be mixed with alcohol and water and then removing the liquid and getting down to a dry powdered extract. So there's a whole bunch of other opportunities here. We can do this, but that will also require some investment, some technical expertise. I have a scientist or a chemist on staff, Brittany Mosel. She's very, very, very smart and very competent. But there's only so many hours in the day to be thinking about things other than rhodiola. Next slide, please. So I'm going to touch on probably pretty much the same things as what Melissa mentioned earlier. We need more growers. We need a lot more support with local laboratory. Why local laboratory? This is really, really critical because when a grower wants to know, can I harvest this week? The weather is looking good. The plants are old enough. What we have to do is get them to send us the roots, the dried roots. We have to send them over to the lab we use a lab in Indiana. There's shipping time. And so by the time we get those results back in 7 to 10 days, the weather may have changed. We are starting to work a little bit with UAA, doing some of this lab support, but they're not really set up to give us rapid turnaround. They want us to batch things so that it's more economic for them. We really need a dedicated lab here. So I'm looking for grants that might afford us to buy our own HPLC, high performance liquid chromatography machine, to do this quickly in-house. The one we're looking at is about $70,000. Ag research. We really do need more involvement with the university, even the Plant Materials Resource Center, even though, this may not be right exactly in their mission, they have the facilities, to help us with tissue cultures and cloning and, breeding, high potency plants. I would love somebody at UAF Extension to help us put together a publication. I mean, you can go there to the experimental farm and pick up, like, how do I grow cabbage? How do I grow this? But there's nothing there that says, how do I grow rhodiola? Well, a lot of it is because there's still so many unknowns, but it would be nice to have something to start with, or in my mind, something that might actually be a living document online where people can put in some of their ideas and what they've learned and constantly refine it and improve it. Another major issue is weed control. And when we went to the SARE conference a couple of weeks ago, there was a wonderful presenter there, a young lady from California who uses goats to control for fire suppression. And I thought, wow, do we know if goats will avoid rhodiola and eat everything else around it? I mean, come on, let's do it. Let's look at this. And also if there's some sort of mechanism where we can have people help us to look for grant opportunities specifically that would work for growers and manufacturers. I did a series of studies using USDA specialty crop grants. I did 3 of them in a row, and I'm exhausted. I can't do it myself anymore. And then of course, state support. Wouldn't it be nice to have a division of ag? Next slide. Well, I came to the end. So if we have time, I'm open for questions.
We do. Man, I'm so excited about all of these. There's been a lot of growth in the last year and
Yeah.
so many, yeah, it's huge. How exciting. It's really great. Are there any questions? Okay. I know when we did this last year, when we had an in-person workshop, there were questions went on for long after we even ended. There is so much interest. I think a cold Saturday has a little bit of a fewer folks coming on, but it's really exciting to see all of this work and expansion and the expanded opportunities for other crops and other inclusion as well. Um, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Okay, Kristina, I'm going to pass this off to you if you want to share your screen.
Yes.
get rid of that. Okay, can you see that, hopefully?
Yes, looks
Okay,
good.
great. Okay. Make sure I could see the one. Okay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Kristina Peterson. I work with Oregon Tilth, and I'm going to be doing an overview of organic certification and what organic looks like in Alaska right now. So, I'm in Portland, Oregon. I am an organic conservation specialist. I am primarily with Oregon Tilth, but I also work in a partnership capacity with the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS. So, the primary function of my job is to provide organic resources and training to NRCS staff in the West region of the United States, which Alaska is a part of. So I won't be talking about NRCS more today, but just wanted to point that out in case you have any questions about NRCS or want to learn more. Feel free to reach out to me. My contact information will be at the end of the presentation. Okay, so our agenda here, we're just going to be talking a little bit about what organic looks like in Alaska right now, some steps to organic certification, and then I'm going to do a little highlight of the transition to organic partnership program, or TOP. Okay, so what does organic in Alaska look like right now? So currently there's 25 certified organic operations in Alaska, which is really exciting to see. So this graph shows a breakdown, and you can see that kelp is the primary producer at the moment. It's grown pretty exponentially in the past year or two, and this data was pulled from the Organic Integrity Database, or OID, and I'm going to be sharing that a little bit later when figuring out how to find your certifier. But this is a great resource if you want to look into what's being organically certified in Alaska, who is doing it. You can go into that database and search by state, and you can see who is certifying kelp, who's certifying rhodiola currently, or birch syrup, etc. So as you can see, kelp is the largest producer right now. It's pretty cool that Alaska is the leading one for this in the United States, and it continues to grow. There's some grocery and brokers and handlers who are certified. There's birch syrup and then a couple rhodiola growers out there. So like I mentioned, organic is growing in Alaska. 12 out of these 25 operations have become certified in the past couple years. So I imagine it'll only continue to grow as time goes on. All right, so what is the organic seal? So what is really important about being certified organic? What does it mean? What doors does it open for producers? So for one thing, we know that organically grown products are more expensive. Organic producers can access markets and premiums that conventional growers cannot. It also represents a universal and regulated standard. So the organic label signifies kind of the same thing across the country. There's enforcement policies in place, and there's also regulations for selling organic and also preventing producers from selling fraudulent organic materials out there. So this really kind of levels the playing field for all organic producers. It leads directly into my third point here, which is kind of like a strong consumer trust in organic certification. So consumers really understand what the label is, what it means, what they're getting when they buy something that is organic. This is also a great form of communication if you are not there to talk about your product with consumers. The organic label can do that if consumers are familiar with the organic program and what it means. Now, I do want to point out that organic certification is not for everyone, and that's okay. So perhaps you are already accessing those markets. You have relationships built with your consumers who are buying your product already. And in Alaska, it's really important to have the local food, knowing where your food comes from and having those relationships with your farmers. And so perhaps it doesn't make sense to become certified organic. I think if getting certified will allow you a higher profit margin or open any new markets for you, it could be worth it. And I do want to share that if you do become certified, rather than just doing organic practices and being uncertified, that really does help open the door towards more research, funding, and talking about organic within the space. And that kind of helps everyone. Okay, so what does organic mean, a definition here? So the National Organic Program, or the NOP, oversees all organic regulations for certification in the country. Now, they define organic as a production system that is managed in accordance with the Organic Foods Production Act and regulations, in this part to respond to site-specific conditions by integrating cultural, biological, and mechanical practices that, one, foster cycling of resources, two, promote ecological balance, and three, conserve biodiversity. So often, organic can be described as simply a system of substitutions or just a list of materials that you cannot use on your operation. And I really like to think that it goes beyond that. So it's not just a production with substitutions or eliminating synthetic materials. It's really focused on that system-wide approach, thinking about the ecology of the system, and practicing farming that maintains or improves what is already there. So really trying to protect the ecology of the land that's being farmed. Okay, so what does this look like in the big world of organic certification? Who is involved? So these are the three roles here that I'm going to go through. So the first is the National Organic Program, or NOP. This is the regulatory program that oversees all organic agriculture, and they enforce the regulations aside certifiers. So the National Organic Program is not reviewing your application. They are not deciding if you can become certified or not. That's up to the certifier. However, they do establish and enforce the regulations, and then they also do audits on the certifiers to ensure certifiers are enforcing the regulations appropriately. Now, the certifiers, these are folks who farmers are going to interact with the most. They're the ones that are going to issue your USDA organic certificate. They're the ones that producers are talking to about their organic system plan. Do they have any changes to that plan? Do they need to set up an inspection? And when they send an inspector to your operation, noting that the inspector is not the one to make the decision about if you can become certified or not, they are just there to kind of be the eyes and ears and go through your organic system plan and then take that back to the certifier to make the decision. And then finally, most importantly, it's the certified organic operations. So these could be farmers and ranchers, or generally called producers, and processors and handlers. So there's 4 scopes to organic certification. We have crops, wild crops, which could be like harvesting birch syrup or mushrooms in the woods, livestock, and then handling. Now, producers can be certified in one of those scopes or multiple scopes if appropriate. So for example, if you're harvesting berries and you're also making jarred jam, then you'd be certified in crop and handling. Okay, so how do we know if you are eligible for certification? So I like to think that there's 2 buckets here. Typically, folks here being organically certified, you have that 3-year transition period, and it can depend. So the first bucket here is if a farmer has recently used synthetic substances that are prohibited under the organic regulations, then they do need to go through that 3-year transition period, and that starts at the last application of that prohibited substance. And then the first certified organic crop can be harvested exactly 3 years after that final prohibited substance has been applied. And then for those 36 months leading up to organic certification, transitioning producers can only use substances that are approved by the NOP. And this could mean like inputs, fertilizers, pests and disease controls, livestock treatments, etc. Now that can seem really daunting when hearing that. However, there's a ton of resources out there to provide lists of approved substances. There's mentorship programs, which I'll talk about later, who can help producers walk through this. So there are a lot of resources to help support you in that transition period. Now, on the other hand, if you are already practicing organic, you're not applying any prohibited substances, then you could be eligible to apply for certification and be certified pretty immediately. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's a little tricky with when the last substance was applied. Now for livestock, there's no one that is certified in organic livestock in Alaska currently, but just to point it out, there's still the same land eligibility requirements for that, but there's also some additional requirements in terms of origin of livestock. So thinking about avian, they have to be managed organically from the second day of life. Ruminants that are intended for slaughter have to be managed organically from the final third of gestation. So that just means that the mother is eating organic food that's certified. And then for dairy animals, you are allowed a one-time, 1-year transition where they have to be managed organically during that time. Okay, so this is just an outline of the certification process. I'm going to go through each step individually, but just so you can see it all laid out here, you're going to start by selecting a certifier, submitting your OSP, and paying your fees. You'll have an inspection, and then your certifier will review all your forms and come up with a decision. And then if you're certified, you'll have an annual inspection. Okay, so the first step here is selecting a certifier. So you can do this by going to the Organic Integrity Database. That QR code will take you there, as well as the website if you just look up Organic Integrity Database. This is a great tool. You can search certifier by state. You can also search producers by state who are certified organic, like I mentioned earlier. You can download an Excel spreadsheet that will give you all the information that you need if you're looking for a specific producer in that state. So here are your certifiers in Alaska. So again, the certifier is the one who's administering the certificate of being certified organic. They can also deny, suspend, or revoke any organic certificate if the operation is not adhering to the standards. So in Alaska, you have Oregon Tilth, Quality Assurance International, CCOF, and Washington State Department of Agriculture. Some of these have fluctuated a little bit. There's one certifier that dropped off recently, and it really kind of just depends on the market at the time and who producers are looking for in a certifier. So in Alaska, historically, it's been quite difficult for producers to afford organic certification. And this is largely because there's no organic inspectors locally in Alaska. So instead, inspectors are having to travel to Alaska to do their inspections, and that can be very expensive and feeding into the cost of certification. So for this reason, many Alaska producers are working with the same certifier, mostly Oregon Tilth, who batches their inspections and then does the same inspections at the same time each year. So then instead of having you pay individually for those travel costs, then it's more batched as a group and you all can split the cost. Oregon Tilth is also working with the Alaska Division of Ag to try and get someone local to Alaska as an inspector. And hopefully when we have that, then that would significantly decrease those costs there as well. But I don't have anything to share on that right now. Hopefully in the future, the next presentation will have some good news. And then lastly, when choosing a certifier, I just want to mention that you really want to look for a certifier who certifies your specific scope. So some certifiers will only certify 3 out of the 4 scopes, or they might not certify livestock. So it's important to keep that in mind. And you can see that in the Organic Integrity Database if you're looking. Okay, so once you choose your certifier, then you're going to submit your Organic System Plan, or OSP. So this really varies by certifier. Oregon Tilth has their forms online, but they also have them in paper format. So if you're just curious and you want to see what an OSP could look like, the forms that are required, you could go online to Oregon Tilth and look up those forms. Essentially, the OSP is an agreement between you as the producer and the certifier. This is really your plan of how you intend to manage your operation organically, and it's what's going to be used during your inspection to ensure that you are following the standards that are put forth. Now, one thing I want to note is that if you are looking to transition to organic, we recommend submitting your OSP at least 6 months in advance, just because it could take some time to go through the paperwork. So here's an example of one of our forms for the biodiversity requirements. This is just something that I like to point out so you could see maybe the layout, and also that for this specific standard, we do ask a question if you as the producer is working with any outside organizations to manage conservation on your property. So for this section, you could indicate that you are working with NRCS or a conservation district, or someone else who is helping you manage the biodiversity there on your land. Okay, so once you submit your OSP, then you're going to pay your fees. Fees vary greatly by certifier, by land size, type. Could range from a few hundred to a couple $1,000s. It really depends. But certifiers are really welcoming. And if you want to call and just ask any of those questions and figure that out, I highly recommend talking to different certifiers, understanding what their fee schedules are, their pay structure, and if that's a good fit for you or not. I do also want to note that there's a cost share program that could reimburse up to 75% of certification fees per scope. This was approved for the previous fiscal year, but those funds have not been released. So it's unclear when the next round of funds will be released, but there is the potential that there could be reimbursement there. So once your forms are submitted and your fees are paid, then your certifier is going to look through all that information, and then they're going to decide if you're ready for an inspection or not. So if you are, then you will have an inspection scheduled before your harvest. Every operation that is applying for certification has to have an in-person inspection after passing their initial review. The inspector will come to your property. They're going to go through your organic system plan with you, and then they're going to ask any questions that they have. They'll want to see every field that you want to get certified organic, and they're going to look at every part of your operation that you're looking to certify. They'll also probably ask you about seeds that you've purchased to ensure that they are organic, or if you have documentation if they aren't organic and you're following those standards there. And then lastly, they will do an audit exercise that kind of tests your record keeping. And this seems daunting as well, but there are also resources to help with record keeping out there and preparing you for those inspections. After your inspection, your inspector is going to take their report, their observations, send that back to your certifier. And then the certifier is going to review all of that information and determine if you are ready for a decision. So that could mean you're certified organic, you need to go back and make some adjustments to your OSP, or you're just not ready for certification. And then once you are certified organic, then you will just have an annual inspection and review. You'll want to make sure that you are in constant communication with your certifier if you want to make updates to your OSP. If you're thinking about applying any new substances to your property, checking with them first if that's allowed. And then just making sure that everything is up to date before that inspection time. Okay, in my last little section here, I just wanted to highlight the Transition to Organic Partnership Program, or TOP. So on a national scale, this is really how we support growers who are looking to get certified organic. We help lower the barrier for entry for certification, which, as I mentioned, can feel very daunting, but there are a lot of resources out there. So TOP is a national USDA initiative. It supports crop and livestock producers through the organic certification process. It's a national program that's split into 6 regions. Oregon Tilth is the leading partner for the Northwest TOP region, but also another one of our partners for Alaska is the Alaska Food Policy Council, who is here today. So there's a lot of great partners out there willing to support organic growers with this. The program is completely free, and it's certifier neutral. So you don't have to work with Oregon Tilth or any specific certifier to access the program. And I just want to mention that it's offered for 1 more year here through 2026. So there is still time to apply if you want to promote it or find producers who are interested. And the most exciting part of this program, especially for me, is the mentorship piece. This is really unique. So it pairs producers who are looking to get certified with already organically certified mentors for free. These mentors are going to work with that producer through the whole process, provide guidance on record keeping, filling out their OSP, working with their certifier, going through the inspection, all the resources that you could need to feel prepared in that transition period. If you are a mentor, you could also get a stipend, which is pretty cool. And then there's also conferences, online resources that you can access that are really helpful for the whole process. So that comes to the end of my presentation here. Like I mentioned, feel free to reach out if you have questions about organic certification, TOP, NRCS, anything. Feel free to email me or call me. That QR code will take you to the TOP website if you're interested in learning more. So if there are any questions, I'll stop sharing here.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristina. That was so much. That was great information for anyone considering it. Moving over to organic, which is it was interesting to see those breakouts of who is doing organic certification in the state right now and how that's changing and growing.
Yes, and I anticipate it will continue to grow. Kelp is huge, so that's really exciting to see. And of course, rhodiola as well. That's growing.
Yes, yeah, that's really exciting. Great. Are there any questions for Kristina? Okay, and I'm actually going to open it up for any questions for anyone on any of the presenters today. If you have any that come along later, I know many people are going to be watching this online from the recorded version. Feel free to reach out to any of us. If you have a hard time finding our information, you can always connect with us through the Alaska Food Policy Council or directly to each of the presenters today. I would just like to extend a huge appreciation for everyone who joined us today and for all of our presenters on this cold and wintry Saturday in December. Thank you so much for your time. And with that, I will close us out and thank you. Please reach out with any questions.